So, in this 1 hour, let's connect, inspire, learn, and grow alongside each other. Um, and we have sisters from New Zealand and India, so it's a nice global audience today. Um, I will introduce Dipanti more, but we've talked about so many topics, and I this was one topic, especially this month is more about the spiritual well-being, which many of you have joined also. So we talked about different layers of spiritual essence, and today, um, when we go a little bit beyond and talk about, it is a very tough topic, I would say. It's not like very easy, it's not, yeah, but it is something. We have a very compassionate speaker, I feel. Once you listen to her itself, it's always so sweet. Her voice, her everything is sweet. So we are very blessed by the divine universe. Dipanti wanted to talk about spirituality, and we were discussing, and then we decided, what about, let's talk about death. What does it mean, and how can you make it a more spiritual way, and how do you embrace it? That is what we wanted to discuss today. So thank you every time when each of you come to the circle, when you contribute to the fee. I'm trying to figure out way to use it. So we've been doing this last year in 2024 in different organizations, and this year 25, it's been donated to food. I like to ask my divine speaker, where do you want me to contribute? So Dipanti mentioned for food donation for Isha organization, so that's where I'll be donating to. So thank you for all the beautiful Mother Nature. Why do I always bring Mother Nature to the context? Is because I feel she's the truth. Um, and every time when you're in doubt, when you look at Mother Nature, you'll find your answers. Mother Nature is always showing us. She's rising. She's showing the new blooms. She's showing how at that few minutes that flower looks like, and then by the end of the evening, you would notice the flower fades away. um, so that is what Mother Nature is already showing it to us, so we should try to understand and embrace her. So one of the sisters sent she said it's 200 million year old rock, um, from Wellington. Yeah. And then beautiful, the sun, the rainbow, banana flower. um, so all sort of beautiful Mother Nature pictures have come. So we've had, yeah, like I said, we have so many beautiful topics on wellness. We talked about our menstrual health. We talked last time about breath, the importance of breath. And today, we'll let Dipanti carry on. Like, why did she use these words, sacred silence, grief, and what does it mean to her?
A very good morning to all of you. Good morning and good evening to all of you. Before we begin, can we just like close our eyes and try to be receptive, to whatever knowledge that is, it's coming through me, but it is the knowledge that has been, passed on from our gurus and everything around us. So I would just like all of you all to just close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths in. Just take a deep breath in and breathe out. Let's take another deep breath in and let go. Take another deep breath in and let go. Slowly and gently, you may just open your eyes. So, at the very outset, I'd like to thank Miss Raji for giving me this opportunity to speak on a topic such as this. So, thank you, Mrs. Raji. It's been an honor. I feel truly blessed to be here and speak about something that's often left unspoken. This is a topic that's hard to talk about, and it's even harder to bear. Grief and the sacred silence that is death. Am I audible, everybody? Is it fine? Okay. In Kathopanishad, Nachiketa is asking Yama, the god of death, about the mystery of what lies beyond. To which Yama replies, Nayam Atma pravachanena labhyo na medhayana bahuna shrutena yam. Avesh vrinute tena labhya tasya esh atma vivrinute. Which basically, it translates to the self, this Atman, it cannot be attained through study or through the intellect or nor through much hearing. It's attained only by the one whom the self chooses. To such a person, the self will reveal its true nature. So, when I first decided to speak about grief and death, when Raji and I were having this discussion that what aspect of spirituality can we speak about, and when we zeroed on in grief and death, I truly questioned myself: Am I even qualified to talk about this? I've not gained any scholarly degree in death, but I realized that I am qualified, just like you are, and just like every one of us is. Because one day, this very body will also perish, right? One day, someone will grieve me. One day, I'll stand face to face with that sacred silence. So, how can I try not to understand it? What is this thing called death and grief? I didn't have all the answers, but I had a lot of questions. So today, by the divine grace and knowledge that I've acquired, from my gurus, Sri Sri Ravi Shankar and Sadhguru, I'm just voicing my understanding to bring light into the shadows we are often too afraid to even, talk about. Now, my first encounter with what death really looked like was a few years ago. I stood watching the mortal remains of one of my relatives, and it hit me this is how utterly silent death is. People around him were grieving. One of his children was too young to even understand what was happening, so blissfully unaware, he would never even meet his father again. The other child held back his tears and he pacified his grieving mother. Grieving they were all, but each in their own way. Such was the dance of death. So, this question about death has intrigued me for a very long time. What happens when we die? Is death painful? Do we go to hell or heaven? Is there a hell or heaven? So, the Bhagavad Gita says, that which is born will die, and that which dies will be born again. Now, they say, science stops where the body drops. But religions of the world speculate what happens after death. Now, my logical and reasoning mind raises an element of doubt about these talks. But truth, it transcends logic. Truth will always resonate with you. Now, there's a saying, they say, Jananam Sukhdam, Maranam Karunam. Life is joy if we learn to live it. Jananam Sukhdam. But death is compassion. Maranam Karunam. Now, imagine a world where there was no death. Imagine if death was taken away from us. If our grandparents, our parents, our great grandparents, every one of them were still alive. Now, do you think the earth could sustain it? Yeah. With 8 billion people, we've seen what the humanity has done. So, can you even imagine the chaos? If you and I were immortal, it would be the worst. Death at the right time is the greatest relief. In a way, it is the biggest motivation that keeps our life vibrant, isn't it? It's only because we know we'll die one day, we get up, we get going, we celebrate, we exercise, we try to live a fulfilled life. Death is a mortal necessity. It frees us from our senses and our body. Now life needs certain tension to keep it going, but death is relaxation. Just like breathing in is life and breathing out is death. Let's give it a try. I want all of you all to take a deep breath in, hold it, and now take a deep, breathe out. Which one gave you more relaxation? Yeah. So before we know more about death, we must know about life. But to know life, we must embrace death. Life and death are not separate. Have you ever felt that even though we are aging every second, something in us is still very alive? It's very vibrant. That's why we say age is just a number, at least for most of us. That is why life and death is a binary situation. But if we avoid death, if we avoid talking about death, then we're truly avoiding life. We're not avoiding death in any way. See, life is unsafe. The only place where safety is guaranteed is a grave. Nothing will happen to us over there. But if we want nothing to happen to us and only be blessed, that everything should be exciting, aren't we avoiding life instead of experiencing it? This is because we lack perspective. We think that life is very long and death is very brief, wherein, we're alive only for a very brief period, but we'd be dead for a very long time. And that is why we must accept that we will die. Life can't be stagnant. Stagnation itself is death. Most of us over here are living better lives than any of our ancestors. Yet, we're living like walking dead bodies. We're always complaining, brooding, long faces. But is this the way one must live? You know, Imagine you're sitting in a movie and there is no villain. Only good things are happening. Will you really enjoy it? So, we must experience life the way it is. Whatever happens, this experience shall be vibrant. Now, when we say life, this physical body is nothing but an accumulation of impressions which we call memory. To know more about how life and death works, we need to know about how first the creation works, which, with different kinds of memories involved. Now, memory isn't just, about what we remember, but it has many layers. So fundamentally, there are around 8 layers of memory. So, there's the elemental memory where, the Panchbhutas come into play: the air, water, ether, fire, earth. All these manifest into, aspects of creation. Then there's the atomic memory, the material substance that this universe is made up of, how atoms, how molecules, how they behave. Then there's the evolutionary memory, how evolution of life has taken place. Then comes the genetic memory, which is passed on, from one generation to the other, like the color of our skin, the color of our eyes, two hands, two legs. Then there's the karmic memory, accumulation of all the impressions that, that's not just from the birth, but it's all through our previous lives. Then the next three layers are related to our mind: the unconscious memory, the subconscious memory, and then the conscious memory, that from which we can recollect and articulate. Now, our bodies, if you realize this, our bodies are held together only because of this memory. Without it, it will fall apart. These memories make our life. But to know about the nature of life, first let's see that there are, two seeds that make our life. One, which is given by our parents, our physical body, which we've accumulated over time. The other seed, which is planted by the Creator, which is within this body. The nature of this first seed is only to survive. It will avoid everything that threatens its survival. But the second one is programmed for endless possibilities. Now, how we utilize this is up to us. Now, when a human is born with these two seeds, a certain kind of software is set within. Now, this software is nothing but energy, time, and all the information from our previous lives, which we call karma. Depending on this karma, energy is allocated to us in different aspects of life. Say you're given, suppose, 1,000 units of energy. So at birth. So maybe 250 might be allotted to you for the physical activity, 100 for evolutionary, another 150 for involuntary activity, say 300 for mental activity, and the remaining for, emotional activity. This is why different people will have different energies for different aspects of life. But most of us, we don't even expend the units allotted to us. Have you seen that people, who do a lot of physical activities, the construction workers, the poor people, or anybody who's like, into a lot of physical activity, they fall asleep the moment they hit the bed. But it is the educated that suffer from insomnia. Yeah. We speak about karmic memory. Now, in India, we refer to this whole stock of karmic memory. Karmic memory is the information or our impressions from our previous lives. We call this as the Sanchit Karma. The entire stock of our karmic memory is called the Sanchit Karma. It's like a warehouse. Imagine this is a warehouse of information of all our previous lives. Now, out of this stock, some portion will be allocated to be dealt with in this particular lifetime. This is called Prarabdha Karma. At birth, Prarabdha Karma will work out what's to be dealt with in this lifetime. And Sanchita karma will decide our tendencies towards certain things. So, how a person will live, how long they will live is all determined by these factors. Now, in our course of life, prarabdha karma will anyways get worked out somehow. Maybe with some suffering here and there, with some pain here and there, some joy here and there. But all we need to be conscious is not to create any additional new karma. At least we can be conscious about it. Now, in another lifetime, another set of prarabdha karma will be worked out, and this goes on lifetime after lifetime. That's why, in India, if someone was suffering, they would say, oh, prarabdha. So, if a person is full time on a spiritual path, what they would do is usually study a lot of different subjects, maybe like math, astronomy, grammar, etc. Because they wanted to, gain so much of information in their system. They wanted so much prarabdha karma allocated in this life itself that the next time when they were born, they could come with a bigger software. They wanted to fast track this process. They wanted to empty the entire warehouse of Sanchit Karma as soon as possible so that they could finally go beyond the cycle of birth and death. In fact, spirituality itself is, fast forwarding this process, dealing with this, dealing with more prarabdha karma than what is allocated to us in this lifetime itself. It may bring suffering and pain, but this is the way to reach mukti or liberation the fastest. Now, what happens when someone dies? We've understood that our physical body is an accumulation of, this genetic and evolutionary memory. But when death happens, all these memories are gone. But it is only the karmic memory that remains intact. That's why they say that the soul is eternal. It's this long term memory, this karmic memory within us, which we carry beyond death, which will determine our future life. Now, to understand what happens at death, we need to know how a human body is made. This body is a composition of 5 sheets. We call them the 5 koshas or 5 coverings. So let's get to know a little more about the composition of this body. What are these 5 koshas? The first layer is the Annamaya kosha. The Annamaya kosha is our physical body. This is what we've accumulated from the food that we've eaten. Say you were 2.53 kgs at birth, and now we are 50, 70, 100 kgs. All this weight that we've accumulated, this is through food. This makes our Annamaya kosha. This is basically our hardware. The second layer is the Manomaya kosha, the mental body. This deals, with our thought process, our mental process, our emotions. We say that what happens in the mind happens in the body too, right? Here, every cell in our body has a mind of its own. When we talk about mental body, we're not just talking about something in our brain, we're talking about every cell having each and every cell having a mind of its own. This is our very software. Now comes the third layer, which is the Pranmaya kosha. Prana is the life energy. This is like, plugging in power, which drives the Annamaya kosha and the Manomaya kosha. Now, karma is imprinted on the body, mind, and on the energy. That is, karma is imprinted, on this Annamaya kosha, on this Manomaya kosha, and the Pranamaya kosha. Then comes the fourth layer, which is the Vijnanmaya kosha, which is the etheric body. Vijnan means, knowledge, but extraordinary knowledge of that which is beyond our 5 senses. Because, this particular kosha, this particular layer, it helps us to discriminate and make decisions in our life. And then comes the fifth layer, which is the Anandamaya kosha. This is the bliss body. Anandamaya means bliss. This is not a physical layer, but generally they say that this can only be experienced. You can't really talk much about it unless and until you experience it. So now when someone dies, only the outer sheets, that is the Annamaya kosha, the physical body, and the Manomaya kosha, that is the mental body, are lost. But the rest of the koshas are still intact. And that will seek another womb and be born again in this world. That's why we say, death is not the end. But if the physical body, the mental body, and the energy body are taken away, then even the bliss body will become one with the cosmos. Now it is truly no more, which we say liberation. Now let's see how separation of this physical body happens at death. Yeah? We always wonder, we're always talking about what is death. To us, death is just physical absence. But there are so many intricate details to, this is an entire process of death. So let's see that, how this physical body is separated at death. So, we spoke about Pranmay Kosha, right? Now, Sri Yukteswar Baba called Prana as lifetrons. We know about electrons, we know about protons, but he gave such a beautiful name to this life force. He called them the lifetrons. The only difference between electrons, protons, and lifetrons is that lifetrons is an intelligent life force. And this Pranamay Kosha, within the five sheets we have Pranamay Kosha. Pranamay Kosha has five dimensions, which basically, which basically, run our life, which are the Saman Vayu, the Pran Vayu, the Udan Vayu, the Apan Vayu, and the Vyan Vayu. Now, Saman Vayu is nothing but which is in charge, it is in charge of maintaining the temperature of our body. You must have maybe noticed that, or you must have maybe heard of, these yogis in the Himalayas with barely any piece of cloth on them. They are meditating in some extreme conditions, right? Because this is the way they activate the Saman Vayu and they create like a shield or kavach around them. Now, this Saman Vayu is also it is also very healing in nature and also in charge of our digestive process. So, if a person's Saman Vayu is very high, they will digest food very fast because only if the stomach is empty can the intellectual capabilities be heightened. And this Saman Vayu is also somehow related to the sun. So, having a connection with the sun can keep us ageless, energy wise and vitality wise. Now there comes, the Pranvayu. Pranvayu is in charge of our respiratory process and thought process. Observe the way how our breath changes if we think about the ocean, if we think about the mountain, if you're thinking about a tiger. Just observe. Right now, just observe your breath. Just put your finger under your nostrils and try to observe how your breath is. Are you not well rested? So it will be heated. If you're well rested, it will be cool. Start thinking about somebody whom you love, and you will see your breath becomes slow, very controlled. And try to think about a person whom you just despise, you loathe. You will see, if you're very conscious about it, you will see there's a change in the pattern of your breath. The breath gets a little faster. So, our thoughts and our breath, they're connected. It is now this Pranavayu, it is related to the Earth planet. Why? Because Earth is the only planet that we can breathe on. Now then comes the Udan Vayu. Udan means to fly. Yeah, this Vayu creates buoyancy and it makes us feel lighter and less available to gravity. You must have seen people who have mastery over this Vayu. They can even levitate. You've heard of some people, they can, float for some time. It is because of if their Udan Vayu is very high, then this is the reason that they can. So on the scale, you will weigh the same, but you'll feel very light. This Vayu is also, in charge of communication. Once this Vayu leaves body, a person cannot be revived. It will start seeking another womb. That is the power of this Vayu. Then comes the Apan Vayu. This is in charge of our excretory system and our sensory functions. Our cells, they push out all the impurities even at cellular level. Only then you can have a good sensory perception. That is why this Vayu deals with sensory aspects as well as the excretory aspects. It's not just the digestive process that we're talking about over here, which is being excreted. It is also that every cell pushes out impurities at a very cellular level. So this Vayu basically cleanses the system in a very big way. Then comes the Vyan Vayu, that which knits the entire, billions of cells into one organism. Now, you must have maybe heard of these stories of certain, yogis. Their bodies are, left on this planet, and, it's been months, they don't even decay because this Vayu is preservatory in nature. So they leave a certain element of, Vyana Vayu in their bodies when they exit this body. This Vayu is also, in charge of the ability to move, and, it also increases your intuition. Now, let us know how is this sequence of death. How this death happens when it in aspects of these Vayus. Now, this is really interesting. Samana Vayu, they say, exits the body within 21 to 24 minutes, once the breath has stopped. That's why you notice the temperature slowly starts cooling. We say, once the person is dead, the body becomes cold. The Pranvayu, which is the respiratory and the thought process, once the breath stops, if it's a natural death and an old age, in an old age, then it will take around 60 minutes. But if it's a young and a vibrant life, it takes around 90 minutes. So that is why they say, to defer cremation at least, after up to 1.5 hours, so that the soul doesn't feel, so that that energy does not feel that turmoil, because that thought and that respiratory process is, still on, but it's in a very vague manner. Then comes, the Udan Vayu. This will be, the body loses this buoyancy and it becomes very heavy within 6 to 12 hours after the breath stops. So the weight will be same, but the body will feel very heavy. Then comes the Apan Vayu. Now, between 8 to 18 hours after the breath has stopped, this Apan Vayu will exit. You might have heard, or you might have even seen, if you've ever seen a dead body. Sometimes, you can see some twitching in their feet or leg, or or toes. That is because, for some reason the sensory aspect is still there. But once this Apana Vayu exits, the sensory aspect is also gone. And lastly comes the Vyan Vayu. This is the slowest to exit, because nature of this Vayu is to preserve. Now, if it's again an old age death, then this will take around 11 to 14 days to exit. And if it's an accidental death or a very young, vibrant soul has gone, then it takes around 40 to 90 days. So that is why, we have certain rituals which are done, to assist this death, to assist that particular life. And when these panch pranas exit, that is when it actually causes the process of death. That's when exactly we can say that, a person is okay, crossed over. Now, we have a total, now we've understood that how these pranas exit. But let's see that, what are the gateways of their exit. So we are going into really these integrities of, the nitty-gritties of the process of death, because once we, we've often, we've been people who don't like to talk about death. We usually shush up death. If a child in a house talks about it, we say, oh, come on, don't talk about it, talk positive. Because we've taken death as such a negative aspect. And then comes the fear, of death. So this is something which is, connecting all of us. It is something so natural which is going to happen to all of us. So if we know about it, if we learn the, deepest secrets about death, wouldn't it help us, right? Wouldn't it at least help us to handle our death better? Yeah, we try to handle our life, but we must also learn to handle our death better, because if we, learn to handle our death better, we'll also in that process learn to handle our life better. So now let's know about, the gateways of these of this exit. So, we have a total of like 114 chakras. They say 112 are inside our body and 2 are outside our body. But, the quality of death will be determined only based on which chakra the prana has exited from. Look at the details of, how this process of death is. It's so mesmerizing, right? Now, if there's a person who has gone in a lot of fear, okay, if this is a really gross life, if it's a very low vibrational life, we're not trying to make any judgments here, but we're just saying if the impressions of this life are, very low vibrational, then this, soul will exit through the Mooladhara chakra. You will often see that they have maybe passed urine or they've passed some kind of stool. Now, if the soul has exited through the Swadhisthana chakra, then you will see that these people are born with great creative prowess. If they have exited through the Manipuri chakra, they say that these people will be very organized people. They'll be businessmen. They can be generals. That sort of they'll be like masters of organization, geniuses at organization. If they exit through the Anahata chakra, okay, the Anahata chakra, these people will be prodigy, in some kind of maybe music, art, or poets. They might be even great devotees. And if the soul has exited from the Vishuddhi chakra, this is now very rare, but these people are born usually with incredible perception. They are fearless. They have great sense of clarity, and this particular life cannot be ignored. They may be just walking past, but you will not be able to ignore this bubble, this particular life that's created. Now, fully conscious beings, they usually exit through the Sahasra Chakra. This is, a little above our head over here. This is the top of the head. And sometimes, there may also be a hole there. It's called the Brahmarandra. When babies are born, there's a hole over here, right? Over here, we call the skull joins only after 1 year. But even exit, sometimes you might notice the skull has cracked open from here. Those are really conscious beings which have exited their bodies. But to die consciously means that one must even live very consciously. So, the quality of death here is very important. So in India, we classified, we say it's akal mrityu or kal mrityu. Like we say it's timely death or untimely death, right? We say, oh, that person has gone too soon. Oh, that person lived a very long life, he lived his time. But, this is where we are actually mistaken. Timely death is where the intent is gone to live, yes. But the prarabdha karma has also run out, then it's timely. Whatever they had to, whatever impressions of their previous life. Now, when we talk about impressions, it's not just, we are, whether you believe in the concept of rebirth or not, that's a totally different concept. But you cannot deny the fact now, even science has proven that, we have genetic memory, we have evolutionary memory, right? We just spoke about there are so many elemental memory, atomic memory. Sometimes we say, oh, my son has the same habit, as my grandfather, and he's never even met him. That's somewhere, that's the genetic memory coming in. We have the evolutionary memory, we have a amygdala, we have a brainstem, which we're always in that fight, flight and freeze mode. These are coming from our memories, all from the evolution, right? So we cannot deny this. So when we talk about this prarabdha karma is basically nothing, that all the information, see, that amoeba which was once there has now become us. Yeah, it's an evolutionary process, right? So somehow from some particular organism we have got this organism, we have become this organism. The only thing we are blessed with is we have a prefrontal cortex when we talk in terms of science, and when we talk in terms of spirituality we say there's the consciousness. The only thing is consciousness goes beyond the prefrontal cortex. This consciousness is in the entire, each and every cell of our body. So when the prarabdha karma, when every impression of our previous lives has run out, only then it is called timely death. Now, what is untimely death? Untimely death is the intent to live. The intent to live is there, but the prarabdha karma also has to be worked out yet. But suddenly this person dies. Then we say this is untimely death. So, age is not a criteria over here to define whether, it is a timely death or untimely death. Now, in timely death, the prarabdha karma will be run out for sure, but the end days will also be very peaceful. In fact, they will even clearly know that they're about to die, and they will show extraordinary wisdom. Maybe if you must have come across a person, who's been really brutal in his entire life, he's not been, a person has not been really aware, brooding, entire life, but all of a sudden, towards the end of their life, and this not nothing to do with age, but towards when their life, when that life is about to cross over, you'll wonder that, oh, this person has suddenly become so mature. What a wise, he's suddenly become so wise. That is because probably his prarabdha karma has run out. So, but we also say that, imagine if now, if a person is still 75 years of age, okay, and but they're still thinking about, their unfulfilled desires of, to live like a teenager and all, then we say, the prarabdha karma has still not run out. Then it is still not yet over. Now, ideally, we say that, life is of 84 years. In this lifetime, if you complete your prarabdha karma and die, then it's a natural death. We just spoke about it, right? But whether it's a heart attack or whether it's some crime, whether it's death by suicide, if the prarabdha karma isn't complete, then it will still be an unnatural death. Now, we must have heard of Mahamrityunjay mantra, right? In India, we jap this Mahamrityunjay mantra. And people think that, this jap over, it is the jap over Mrityu. It is, winning over death. But has anyone ever won over death? Even the people who did this jap in the past have also gone. So no one can ever, win over death. But what we can win over is, this fear of death. Because only then life can truly be lived. You're open to anything that life throws at you. We always want, we want our life to be really long. We want to extend our life. We want to push death away. But one must think that, is my experience of this life enhanced only if I live a greater number of years? Is it only, a vibrant life, a great life, only if I live greater number of years? Someone may say, oh, I'm 100 years old. And we may think, wow, what a long life. But has their experience of life been wow? That is the question to ask. Now, why do people seek new dimension? Why is it that this human has, we don't know of it because we are not yet dead. And if we are dead, we don't know how to communicate it to the living. At least we don't know that. But why do we have this, sometimes this, today, who all of y'all who are attending this, why do we have that desire to know something more about death? Why don't we just accept it as just physical absence? Now imagine you're sitting in a movie, okay? You're watching this movie day in and day out. Every single day, throughout the day, you're watching this movie. First few days, you'll really enjoy it. You'll feel all the emotions. But after few weeks, you'll wonder, is this all that there is? Now imagine now if you're watching this movie, the same very movie if you're watching from the projector room. Now you come to realize that all these emotions that you've been feeling so strongly are only a perception of light and sound. That's it, right? So death is the end of physical body, but it will find a new body and this process will continue. But when we talk about mukti or when we talk about this liberation, what is that mukti and liberation? It is freedom from this existence and this process of life and birth and death. So, after you go to school, don't you want to graduate to college? Yeah. So it is something just like that. Now, till now, whatever we've spoken about death, you must have maybe realized that, there is no death. In reality, there is no death. There is only life and only life. And, unless, Mahasamadhi is attained. Now, Samadhi, we say, Samadhi is Sama. Sama is equanimity and Dhi is Buddhi. So when the intellect that is equanimous, we call it Samadhi. No, now man, we as men, we have discriminatory intellect. We can tell that this body is separate, this mind is separate, this spirit is separate, right? But beyond death, we lose this discriminatory sense. We all have, all the living beings have this discriminatory sense. I can say that, okay, this is good, this is bad. This is because this comes from a sense of discrimination. But in Mahasamadhi, it is that state that transcends this discriminatory intellect and it can dismantle this physical body without harming it. So, now someone may question that, what is the difference then between suicide and Mahasamadhi? Correct? Because eventually you're leaving the physical body which has been blessed you by the divine. That is what our concept of life is. But the difference here is that in suicide, a person they cause harm to their body and that's how they exit. They're fed up of this life. They're tired of this life. In Mahasamadhi, you are consciously very, very aware of what you're doing. You go beyond this physical realm without causing any harm to your body. So now why must we even prepare for death? Why must we prepare well for death? This question arises. Okay, now imagine that you had to visit another country. Now, wouldn't you make all the necessary preparations in advance? Yeah, you will pack our clothes, our toiletries, we'll book our tickets, keep everything organized. Now, when we are going on a even longer journey from this physical plane to the non-physical plane, then shouldn't we make adequate preparations even for that? Yeah. Even, the wild animals, they withdraw from their environment. They sit in a very, peaceful place and they don't eat anything when it's their time. So we as humans, we must at least prepare for death. I'm saying that, instead of choosing all this, drama around us, fearing death, which is natural, but consciously, if you're just conscious about this, can we prepare to go in a dignified way? The final moments over here are of great importance. How we die, it doesn't matter. But what happens inside of us is important. For example, let's say that, someone falls from a great height and dies. But at that very moment, if the inside of his was peaceful, if that inside has accepted that this is it, then, it is not a violent death. But at the same time, imagine now there is a man who is lying on a deathbed in the hospital. He's surrounded, by all of his relatives, by all his loved ones. But his inside feels, he feels a lot of turmoil of emotions, He's maybe seen a relative whom he just despises. And that's the moment he's, the breath has stopped. Then that's a very violent death because that's his last impression. So that's why, the nature of death is not important. But what one feels inside is very, very important. Now, whatever be the nature of death, say, there are, let anything happen, whether it's a plane crash, whether it's, death by falling, whether it's heart attack, whether it's anything. We've just understood that, life exits very slowly, it recedes very slowly. Like when we learned about the pranas, how each pran takes its own time to exit. So, whatever be the moment, whatever be the nature of your death, there will definitely be moments between the injury and the death. Because, death happens, it's a process, right? Life recedes slowly. But even for this, we need to live our life very, with full of awareness. Just like our last thought before sleep becomes our first thought after we wake up. Our last impression at death also, it causes, it basically, decides what will be the course of our future lifetimes. That's the beauty of this death. Now, why do people, fear death? When, think about it, life is natural, right? We say life is natural. Then even death is natural. So, fearing something natural is actually unnatural, right? But because we identify with this body so strongly that we don't even want to explore or know the possibilities of other dimensions that exist beyond this physical. Now, for example, this is a cup. Can you see this cup? Yeah, this is a cup. Now I'll say, this is mine. Okay. For example, I say, okay, this body, this cup is representing my body. So I say, okay, this cup is mine. You will say, okay. The Panti says this cup is hers. Now I say, this cup is me. You'll wonder, okay, I think I need to just take a step back. What is this person even talking about? Is this person even really aware? This cup is you. This is exactly the kind of bondage, we have this strong attachment we've created to this body. You know, so even our body, you must realize, is been accumulated over time. At birth, there was no body in the womb, right? There was no body in the womb. Now, we say that, you put on weight, we shed weight. But even shedding in a way is, shedding a part of your body is also death in some way. But, we don't call that death. See, what we have accumulated, we will surrender. We talk about, Shakti and Shiva. Shakti is dynamism, Shiva is inertia. So we say day and night is there. If day is there, night exists. If Shakti is there, Shiva will exist. Inhale, if you inhale, we'll exhale. It's exactly the same way. When there's life, there will be death. It is all a universal cycle. Now, most of us don't really fear death, but it is basically, the fear of pain or the loss of a near one that we think, where that death brings. But now, the injury and disease, it can be painful, but, death is not. A man once, there's a story where, a man falls from the second floor, and once he hits the ground, he screams loudly. All the people, gather around. And they're like, oh, did you get hurt? Did the fall hurt you? He said, you fool. It's not the fall that has hurt me. It's hitting the floor that has hurt me. It's the injury which has hurt me. It's not the fall. It's not the transition from the physical to the non-physical that has hurt me. So, you'll see that there are so many people that who are convinced that, they will, if they gain by death, they'll sign up for it happily. Correct? You must have heard of these people. They say, oh, I'm ready to die. If I know that I'm going to gain something by it, they'll happily sign up for it. Because this is all about, understanding that there's nothing to lose. We came with nothing. We will drop these clothes one day. That is it. The earth is simply recycling. Now, how do we deal with this fear? Identifying ourselves as this body is the biggest reason for this fear. When people fear life, there are people who fear life. They fear even death. They seek security constantly. You must have seen, they end up drinking. They'll curl in their bed. Even curling is, in a way that they want to actually go back to the fetus, fetal position. If you psychologically understand this, they want to sleep. Sleep is nothing but the sister of death. All they want is actually death because they want to escape life. So this fear is because, why? Because we have not experienced ourselves beyond this physical body and mental body, which is why we must do this kind of, we must do our spiritual practices, our sadhana, so that we are aware of what life is. The anxiety of what can happen to this body actually destroys it. There is a very amazing story about this vegetable seller. He was a regular vegetable seller, and one day, he had some issue, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, today you will die. And this man is now, flabbergasted. This man is scared. He said, today is the end. And he's lived his entire day in fear. He's lived that entire night in fear. He couldn't sleep. But somehow he survived that night. Now comes the next day. Now he goes to the doctor and says, I'm still alive. And now, the doctor says, but you have very few hours to live. He's again, lived in that fear throughout that entire day. And this goes on for, couple of days and then couple of weeks. Now it's 4 months, past all this has happened. But now he is suddenly recovered. So, this person asked, how did you recover? He said, I was living in so much fear throughout that one day I just gave up. I said, this is it. If I die, I must die. It's okay. Let it be. And, when he overcame that fear is when he actually recovered. So this is, how we react to our illness or death can either free us or can entangle us. Fear is a consequence of, some situation in us. It's more about what happens in our imagination more than what it is in actuality. We need to be very mindful of how our thoughts generate, how our emotions generate, what we do to this body. So every day I will, ask, I must practice this myself, and I ask all of you to do this as well. Remind yourself that, I am going to die. 5 minutes is also enough, but this will release the fear of death. Because, we say that, if one dies in old age, or if, and they say that, if somebody is dying in old age, or suppose if we know that we're going to die, we ask that person to simply just lie down and every day just observe your breath, observe that, how you and your body are different. And then, person can prepare for a good death. Now, let us know that how our last moment is important. When we say we have a body, we still have the ability to discriminate, right? If I say I'm hungry, but I don't want to eat this, whatever is put on the table, I don't want to eat it. Even if that compulsion arises in our body, we can say no. But once we drop this body, the ability to discriminate goes. All this memory will be there, but this discriminatory intellect will be lost. But whatever is the content of our mind at that last moment, that is going to multiply manifold. So if a being has exited in a pleasant state, then it will manifold, multifold, it's going to manifest multifold beyond that, physical plane. If they've gone in a very unpleasant way, then that is going to manifest manifold. And that is why it was said, in India it is said that, to create the very right atmosphere, say the right things when the person dies. That is why it's very important, when someone dies, we don't create stress around that person. Oh, what's happening? Just chant the name of God, whatever you identify with, let that person live in peace. Now, our final moments decide the future of our future life tendencies. Now, whether it is an enemy or a friend, we must realize that once this body has dropped, at least we must do by it well. We must make sure to enhance their life. We must, give them a good final moments, so that, they're reborn pleasant. How they lived is anyways over, but they must at least leave well. Now, what in India we do is, that is why we have all these rituals. You'll notice that, we keep them in a very clean space. We'll probably switch on some blue light, or we light a ghee lamp over there. We chant mantras, we light an incense stick. All this, ideally should be done for 14 days, because, like we spoke about how the pranas exit, death happens very slowly. Even if a person is declared dead, passing to the other realms, it happens very slowly. So, like, chanting, it helps the Udan Vayu to exit very swiftly. Now, usually the Udan Vayu exits, we spoke about it, between 6 to 12 hours after the breath has stopped. But, if we cremate before that, the soul will feel some kind of, that being will feel some kind of turmoil, because it does have some sense of energy still remaining in this realm. So now, when death happens, one doesn't have their discriminatory intelligence, right? We've learned about this now. We just spoke about this. They don't have the sense of discrimination, but that soul has always thought that that itself is the body. So it still lingers around, and tries to go back. But if they say that, if we keep the soul towards the north direction, the head towards the north, then it will be easily distanced, and this process, for its journey further, will be a little smooth. That is why we have this culture of putting a dead body, towards the north direction. We tie their big toes. Now, why do we tie their big toes? Because this, they say, is, the soul lingers and it tries to enter the body through the Mooladhara chakra. But when you tie the big toes, it closes the Mooladhara chakra. And also they say, in ancient India, it's not very relevant now, but they say, occult practices used to take place. So we don't want any other entity to take advantage of, this kind of, physical remains of this, particular energy. We wash this. Second thing what we do is, we make sure that we wash this, body, we wash the person, and we clean, and, we cloth the body with a white cloth. Why is it, white? Have you wondered why do we wear white? Because, the heat outside, the sun's heat, it decomposes the body very fast, and we don't want that decomposition to happen very fast. We want the life in this body to recede at its own pace, so that the soul doesn't again go through the turmoil. So white is a color which reflects that heat, which reflects light, and that is why we put, white color cloth on this body. We don't eat over there. Generally, you must have known that, for 3-4 days food comes from out. We don't cook in that house. But the science behind that is that the reason is that, in some way that person's energies are still exiting. So if you even eat food over there, not just cook, even if you eat food, as brutal as it may sound, but, in some way we are eating, our relative. I know it sounds very brutal. So we don't even sleep next to the body. We avoid touching the body, but we don't leave that body alone. And their belongings are usually distributed to different people within relatives, but we usually distribute it to different people because we don't want that energy to linger around, because it is so attached to whatever it was. And that's why you must have noticed that we put some piece of gold in their mouth. We put the best clothes on, whatever they loved, so that that the whole point of it is that we want that energy to understand that this is over. Now you move ahead, we are going to move on, you also move on. So all these rituals post death are because the prana recedes slowly, the energy is still lingering. It's good to let that person know that it's over. And I also want to talk about that these rituals are usually very effective within 3 to 5 days of the death itself. But if it's an old age death, again, if these rituals are done within 11 to 14 days, we still have access to that energy, and we can help that life in its future journey. And if it's a very vibrant life that has passed away, then we say within 40 to 48 days, after within 40 to 48 days we must perform these rituals. But after that, our ability to access them reduces. So, to sum it up, our entire aim is to take on maximum prarabdha karma in this lifetime. Yeah. It will involve suffering, it will involve challenges, but that is what spirituality is all about. Fast tracking our way to freedom, to liberation, to mukti. Now, realizing that when we die, we only lose our physical form, but we are still here. We don't go anywhere. It's not it's not like it's not a geographical shift. It's only a shift in dimension from body to no body. Yeah, these are we say that you may go to hell or heaven, but don't you think this is just a concept of mind? I think it's just a psychological tool, right? Maybe to just control people, to help people. See, if we die peacefully in a pleasant state of mind, it is heaven. If we die miserably, that is hell. But mukti and liberation is going beyond all these forms. It is just to simply dissolve. Now that we have tried to understand what death is, one realizes that we humans have this capability to even think about it. Yeah, animals don't have this capability. They understand what death is, but they don't have the capability to think about it. Now we can attempt at least to deal with this in a phenomenal way. But now, how do we deal with this grief that comes from death of a closed one, which is going to be my next
Deep
topic.
topic.
Now that we've spoken so much about death, right? Yeah. So now comes the question about how do we deal with this grief that comes from the death of a closed one. Maybe we can deal with our own death. Maybe we can overcome the fear of death of our of our own death. But how do we deal with this grief that comes along with the death of a closed one? Now, for this, one must understand is that, thousands of people around us die every single day, every single second. But we continue to live our life unaffected only because these deaths don't leave a vacuum in our lives. But it's the vacuum or this void that is created by a particular life that was, part of our life. That emptiness which is, created, that hole that is created, that we can't handle. The plans we made with them, the life we imagined with them, the illusion that we created, all the plans, all the illusion that we've created are now, it's been shattered. That Maya is gone. So grief is, actually about incompleteness. It's nothing. It's about this big hole that they've left in life. This is basically what grief is about. But why do we feel? If you consciously try to think about it, why do we feel incomplete? Now the Creator has given us a complete life, right? In any way are we incomplete? Yeah. Do you think in any way are we incomplete? We realize that the Creator has given us a complete life. If we truly realize and experience life the way it was meant to be, we'll say, I am a complete life. Then whatever happens to us, I'll not grieve. Does this mean that we have no feelings for the departed? Does this mean that we don't love the departed? Of course not. There will be immense love. But to a very big extent, one must also understand is that grief is on a psychological level and not on an existential level. They say that if a child passes away between 4 years to 20, 21 years, then that parent is not only feeling grief on a psychological level, but even on an existential level. You will see that, that pain it will manifest physically in the parent's body. But somehow, we call this in the yogic terms, it's called Runana Bandhu. It's the bondage that we have created with the other soul. But the process of life is such that beyond 21 years, this Runana Bandha starts receding. So the parent will feel the pain. There's going to be a lot of grief and suffering and pain, but it is more on a psychological level. They also say that, in fact, if a child has passed away, of course, the grief that comes along with it is too deep to even talk about so casually. But what I'm trying to, talk about is, if that child, once that child's soul has crossed over, that, that life has finished for us. Now, no longer it is our child, right? But they say that, when the child is, maybe it has taken rebirth somewhere else, if we are very conscious about it, they say, the parent's body will feel it. Their skin, from dry skin, it will start feeling hydrated. There is some sort of sensation in the body where, when the moment the parent has accepted that, okay, now this has happened, it's probably the time that soul has already taken another wing. So, what I'm trying to say over here is that, once this life has, crossed this boundary, of course there is grief involved, but that life is over. To us, it may be our sister, it may be our child, it may be our parent, our mother, father, but this disembodied energy, it is no longer that. It is over. But we don't come to terms with this fact, so the grief seeps in, of course. But then we say slowly with time, grief recedes, and we slowly move on, right? Now, the same process, what we are taking time to understand, can be understood faster if we accept that when someone dies, it is over. That is the end of it. But how do we casually talk about it that, okay, it's over? How do we deal with this grief in reality when it hits us? Firstly, we must cherish their memories. Okay, we see they have left happy memories with us. We have created such happy memories with them. So we must cherish their memories, and we must try to move on with our lives. But don't you think that we must also prepare for it? Yeah. So to deal with grief easily, the one very effective way to do it, I know, and as harsh as it may sound, one must prepare for it. Every day we must think that one day I am going to lose the people I love. This is going to happen. This is inevitable. It is scary. It is very scary. When I was writing about grief, when I was, thinking what is exactly grief, how do we actually overcome it? I think I just broke down. I cried so much because the fact to even have that thought that maybe it could be my child, maybe it could be my parent, maybe it could be my spouse. It was just so fearsome. It was so shattering. I cried so much. But I said that this is what it is. If this preparation starts from this very moment, if every day, because this is something we all are going to face. This is going to happen, whether you want to deal with it now or not. If you're keeping it, if you're going to deal with it some other day, it's going to hit you like in ways you cannot even imagine. Because when that moment happens, when that thing happens, you don't know what you are going to do. What trajectory of your life can change with that instance. But if we deal with it, it is scary, but if we somehow deal with this pain, if we try to prepare for it, then in some way, when it actually happens, it might ease that pain. So right now we say that if someone dear to us has passed away, we can also do one thing, that we can channel this love. We can give it to the people who are so deprived of it. They're dying to get this kind of love. If a parent has lost a child, or if a child has lost a parent, or if you lost, there are so many people who have not even received their love, this kind of love, in their entire lifetime. So if in a way, if we channelize this love to those beings, then our life goes beyond this grief. Yeah, then even our grief, we can move on faster. And we're also channeling this grief, this energy from here for something so much more bigger than just one life. So we must understand that what is happening within us, for whatever reason it may happen. If we are conscious that whatever is happening within us, it is because of us, and only we can change it. We come alone, we are going to go alone. Now, grief is a very complex and deeply personal journey. When it actually hits us, all of this preparation, all these meditations, the sadhanas, none of it might come to use. This is one of the most difficult things to deal with. But we must also understand that, if a person who has crossed over has made an impact in your life, if it has made a positive impact in your life, then we show it by living it, right? We must show it by living it. If we are going to grieve our entire life, then that means this person is the biggest problem in your life. Yeah? Don't you think? Now, as I come to the end of this sacred sharing, I'd like to leave you with these timeless words of Lord Krishna. He says that the soul is never born, nor does it even die. It has never come into being and it will never cease to be. It is unborn, it is eternal, it is ever existing and primeval. Weapons cannot destroy it, and fire cannot burn it. Water cannot wet it, and wind cannot dry it. This body we grieve over is but a vessel. The Atman is untouched and infinite. And so, while grief is very natural, but it is not the end. It's a doorway to, remembering, to loving deeper, and to awaking the truth of who we really are. Thank you, everybody, for being here, for being a part of this. This is a topic which is very difficult to talk about. But because of this meet that we had today, I learned so much about this, and there's still so much to process. But I'm very thankful to each one of you who's over here, for sharing this journey. And I hope we continue to live this talk. I hope that it doesn't stop over here. So I thank all of you.
Thank you so much, my dear. Wow, I've written like 52 notes to share to the other sisters. And what you brought, the words you said, the adjectives used, death is relaxation, peaceful, those adjectives, that's what I really take with me. And I prepared a lot for my birth of both my children. Like I did lamas, I read so many books, to make that process very, like, because even birth, some say it's painful, this and that. But I prepared myself so much for it, and it was so beautiful, so blissful. One was in a home sort of environment, another was among medical, but still very beautiful, very natural. And I felt, because I prepared for it, when the nurse is telling me, okay, now you push, now you wait, some words, keywords they're telling me, I was able to, yeah, I understand, okay, okay. So I found it was so important to prepare. And today I feel so, really, I am sure the other sisters agree, how much of compassion. We are so blessed that we have such a compassionate person who talked to us, and you gave us empowerment that it's not this myths that it's painful. It doesn't have to be like that. Yes, the feelings are there, but you've really prepared me to, okay, every day think about life more. So thank you for that. You are so right. Even birds, I have seen, that bird is sort of in its last few hours, because it's like walking so slowly, and we'll all think, okay, let's give some grains, let's put some water. But suddenly in the morning you see it's past, and it doesn't want all that. It just wants a quiet environment. And like you said, that last minute, it's really hard to remember that peace. But from today, if we just keep living that peace, the how spirituality can help us also live it, and like finish off all those karmas, don't add more karmas, conscious way of living, then how beautiful life is what I learned from you. Truly, this what you spoke today, I pray to you that you share it more. Like, this topic, I will share it, but you're really a divine instrument, and you must share it to more divine souls, workshops, whoever comes your way. So thank you.